The encounter. The wind howled through the ruins of Sci-Fi 9, a dying planet where the red sun hung low in the sky. Captain James Carter moved carefully through the wreckage of a once great city, his boots crunching against the cracked stone. The war had reduced this place to dust. The air smelled of burnt metal and death. His rifle was heavy in his hands, his heart pounding. He was alone. His squad was gone. Ambushed, slaughtered. He had barely escaped, and now he had nowhere to go. His radio was dead, and his water supply was low. If he didn't find shelter soon, he wouldn't last the night. Then he felt it. A presence. Watching him. Carter froze, his instincts screaming. He turned slowly, gripping his rifle tighter. Standing among the ruins, like a statue of war, was an alien warrior. Tall and broad-shouldered, the creature had deep blue skin with golden markings running down his arms. His armor was sleek, shining with the emblem of Typhorian royalty. A long, dark cape draped over his shoulder, shifting slightly in the breeze. His face was sharp, regal, yet his glowing amber eyes held no rage, only curiosity and calculation. This was no ordinary soldier. This was a prince. Prince Calfar of Sci-Fi. Carter's grip on his weapon tightened. His training told him to shoot first, but something about the alien's stance stopped him. He wasn't attacking. Calfar tilted his head, studying the human before him. Then, in a deep, calm voice, he spoke. "You are not like the others, human." Carter's breath hitched. The alien's voice was smooth, controlled, each word carrying an air of authority. He raised his rifle slightly. "And you're not trying to kill me. That makes both of us different." A flicker of amusement crossed Calfar's face. "If I wished you dead, human, you would not be standing." Carter swallowed hard. He wasn't sure if that was arrogance or fact. Maybe both. A long silence stretched between them. The only sound was the wind carrying the whispers of the fallen city. Finally, Calfar stepped forward. Slow, deliberate, unafraid. Carter raised his gun higher. "Stay right there." Calfar stopped. His golden eyes narrowed slightly, but his expression remained calm, measured. "You hold your weapon as if it is the only thing keeping you alive. Tell me, does it make you feel safe?" Carter scoffed. "Safe? Not on this planet." Calfar nodded, as if he understood. He let out a breath. Then, to Carter's shock, he removed his sword from his waist, a long curved blade with glowing runes, and dropped it to the ground. A gesture of peace. Carter frowned. He had heard stories about the Typhorian warriors. They never surrendered. They fought until their last breath. So why was this one standing before him, unarmed? "I do not wish for unnecessary bloodshed," Calfar said, his voice steady. "But I do wish to know why you fight." Carter hesitated. "What?" Calfar took another step, slow and careful, keeping his hands away from any weapons. "Humans wage war against my people, but I wonder, do you know why?" Carter clenched his jaw. "Because your kind attacked first." Calfar's expression darkened. "Is that what they told you?" Carter glared at him. "You're saying it's a lie." The alien prince studied him for a moment. Then, in a low voice, he said, "I am saying there is more to war than what soldiers are told." Something in Carter's gut twisted. He had seen things during this war, things that never made sense, orders that led his team into pointless battles, allies that were left behind without explanation. And now, a Typhorian royal standing before him, offering words instead of weapons. It didn't add up. Calfar gestured to the ruins around them. "This was once a great city. It stood for thousands of years. My ancestors built it, just as yours built Earth's. Now, it is dust. Tell me, soldier, is this victory?" Carter exhaled sharply. No, this was destruction. But he couldn't trust this alien. Not yet. His grip on the rifle tightened, but his finger hesitated over the trigger. His instincts screamed at him to decide. Shoot, or listen. Kalthar's eyes never left him. Calm, patient, unshaken. Then, the sound of distant footsteps echoed through the ruins. Someone else was coming. Both of them turned toward the noise. A shadow moved between the broken buildings, and it wasn't human or Xyphorian. Carter's chest tightened. Something wasn't right. Kalthar bent down, picking up his sword once more. He looked at Carter with a knowing gaze. It seems your decision must be made sooner than you expected. Carter's pulse pounded in his ears. He had thought this encounter was the real fight. But now, he realized, the real danger was only beginning. The challenge. A low, guttural sound echoed through the ruins. It was distant but growing closer. Something was coming. Carter gripped his rifle tighter, scanning the shattered buildings around him. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the war-torn streets. The silence before the storm. Kalthar, the Typhorian prince, stood tall beside him. He held his blade with both hands, the runes along its edges flickering with faint golden light. His expression remained unreadable, but his body tensed ever so slightly. He sensed it too. Then, from the darkness of the ruins, it appeared. A mechanized creature, unlike anything Carter had ever seen before. It moved with an eerie grace, its body shifting seamlessly between liquid and solid metal. Black, silent, unnatural. Carter sucked in a breath. This wasn't Xyphorian. It wasn't human either. The machine stopped, its glowing red eyes scanning them. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, it moved. Faster than Carter could react, the creature lunged forward, its elongated limbs stretching unnaturally toward them. Instinct took over. He rolled sideways, barely dodging as metal claws slashed through the air where he had been standing. Kalthar, however, did not move. Instead, he stood his ground. At the last second, his blade flashed, a sharp metallic ring echoing through the ruins as he struck. Sparks flew as his sword connected with the creature's arm, slicing through it like butter. The machine reeled back, a high-pitched screech escaping its mouth. Carter scrambled to his feet, heart racing. What the hell is that thing? Kalthar exhaled slowly, his golden eyes narrowing. A mistake. The creature twitched, its severed arm reforming, the metal reshaping itself as if time was reversing. Carter felt a chill crawl up his spine. Yeah, that's not normal. Kalthar didn't hesitate. He lunged forward with graceful precision, his sword cutting through the air in fluid, deadly movements. Each strike was measured, aimed at the creature's weak points. But every time his blade landed, the wounds healed instantly. Carter cursed under his breath. Shooting it seemed pointless, but he wasn't about to stand around and do nothing. He raised his rifle, lining up a shot at the creature's head. He fired. The bullet hit. But the creature barely flinched. Instead, it turned directly toward him. Carter had just enough time to dodge before the thing lashed out, metal claws slicing through his shoulder armor. The force sent him crashing against a broken wall, pain flaring through his body. Kalthar leaped between them, his sword blocking another attack. But the machine was relentless, its movements adapting to Kalthar's fighting style. It was learning. Then, without warning, the creature stopped. It tilted its head, as if analyzing something, then slowly stepped back. Kalthar and Carter exchanged a glance, both breathing hard. Then, in a distorted, mechanical voice, the creature spoke. Unfit. No challenge. Carter's stomach twisted. It had judged them, and apparently, they weren't worth killing. The machine turned, its body shifting back into the shadows of the ruins. Within seconds, it had disappeared, as if it had never been there. Silence settled over them once more. Carter exhaled shakily, wiping sweat from his forehead. What the hell was that thing? Kalthar sheathed his sword. A hunter. Carter frowned. Hunter. Kalthar met his gaze. Something far worse than war. Carter swallowed. That thing had been fast, intelligent, and indestructible. if there were more of them. "We need to move," Calthar said, turning toward the deeper ruins. Carter hesitated. Every instinct told him not to trust this alien, but he had just fought beside him. And now, there were machines hunting them both. Finally, he sighed. "Fine, but I still don't trust you." Calthar smirked slightly. "Then you are not a fool." Carter rolled his eyes. Yeah. Let's just not die before I figure out what the hell is going on." Together, they vanished into the ruins, heading toward answers neither of them were ready for. The truth of the war. The ruins of Sci-Fi stretched endlessly before them, jagged remains of once majestic structures now reduced to rubble. The dying sun painted the sky in hues of deep orange and violet, casting long shadows that flickered like ghosts of the past. The silence was thick, broken only by the distant howls of the wind and the crunch of Carter's boots against broken stone. Beside him, Prince Calthar moved with a warrior's grace, his sharp golden eyes scanning their surroundings with silent vigilance. His sword was back in its sheath, but his muscles remained tense, ready for another fight. The encounter with the mechanized hunter had rattled Carter, but the Typhorian prince seemed almost expecting it. Carter finally broke the silence. "You want to explain what that thing was back there?" Calthar did not look at him. A remnant of a war that never ended. Carter scoffed. "Sounds dramatic." Calthar stopped, turning his gaze toward Carter. "You have been fighting the wrong war, human." Carter narrowed his eyes. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" The Typhorian prince exhaled, as if weighing his words carefully. Then, without a word, he turned and began walking again. Carter hesitated, then followed. The hidden outpost. They traveled in silence for nearly an hour, moving through what remained of old Typhorian civilization. Cracked roads, rusting structures, and statues of forgotten leaders now crumbling under the weight of time. Eventually, they reached what looked like a long-abandoned military outpost, half buried under rubble. Calthar knelt beside a collapsed wall, brushing away dirt and debris to reveal an access panel. The alien symbols glowed faintly under his touch, and with a low mechanical hum, a hidden door slid open. Carter raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's convenient." Calthar ignored the comment and stepped inside. Carter followed cautiously, his fingers resting near his rifle's trigger. The tunnel beyond the door was dimly lit by flickering green lights embedded in the walls. The further they walked, the colder the air became. Then they reached a vast underground chamber. Rows of holographic displays flickered to life as they entered, showing ancient battle plans, star charts, and encrypted messages. Massive monitors on the walls played fragmented recordings, images of both humans and Typhorians fighting side by side against a shared enemy. Carter's stomach twisted. This wasn't what he had been taught. Calthar gestured toward one of the monitors. "Look, human. Look and understand." Carter took a step closer. The footage was old, but clear enough to make out the details. It showed a battlefield, not on Earth, not on Sci-Fi, but somewhere far beyond the borders of known space. Humans and Typhorians weren't fighting each other. They were fighting something else. Something that looked eerily similar to the mechanized hunter they had just encountered. The recording continued, showing commanders from both races standing together, planning strategies, an alliance. And then, in the final frames of the footage, Carter saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. A human general, one he recognized, was shaking hands with a shadowy figure, its face obscured. But Carter knew that uniform. He knew that insignia. It was the same military division that had sent him here. His fists clenched. "What is this?" Calthar's voice was steady, but there was something bitter underneath. The truth. The war that never ended. Calthar moved to another terminal, pressing his hand against the surface. A deep rumble vibrated through the chamber as a larger screen flickered on, showing a map of the galaxy. Certain areas were marked with red zones. Territories lost, planets destroyed, sectors abandoned. Calthar pointed to one of the red zones. Long before you or I were born, humans and Sci-Fians were locked in war, just as they are now. But then something changed. He gestured to the screen. A new enemy arrived, one that did not speak, did not negotiate, did not care for territory or resources. His golden eyes darkened. Machines. Hunters. Like the one we faced. Carter felt his skin prickle. You're saying humanity and Sci-Fians actually fought together against these things? Calthar nodded. And we won. His voice turned colder. Or so we were made to believe. Carter's mind was spinning. This changed everything. Then why the hell are we fighting now? He demanded. Calthar's jaw tightened. Because your leaders, and mine, chose war over peace. Carter shook his head. That doesn't make any sense. Why would they? Then, suddenly, he remembered something the mechanized hunter had said before it left. Unfit. No challenge. His blood ran cold. Calthar turned back to the screen. Do you see it now, human? His voice was low, controlled, but there was an unmistakable edge of anger beneath it. We are being used. This war is not about territory. It is not about honor. He looked straight at Carter. It is about survival. And we are the entertainment. Carter exhaled slowly. Someone's keeping the war going, to keep us distracted. Calthar nodded. And while we fight each other, the real enemy watches. And waits. Carter took a step back, running a hand through his hair. He had come to this planet believing he was fighting for a cause. But now, he wasn't even sure what the cause was anymore. A long silence settled between them. Then Calthar spoke again. We cannot fight them alone. Carter looked at the alien prince. His training told him never to trust an enemy. But if Calthar was right, then Sci-Fians weren't the real enemy. And if they didn't stop fighting each other, they might not be left with anyone to fight at all. Carter took a deep breath. All right, he said. What's the plan? Calthar's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. Now you are asking the right question, human. And with that, the real battle began. The alliance of enemies. The underground chamber hummed with the quiet whispers of forgotten history. Flickering holograms of old war footage cast eerie blue light across Carter's face as he stared at the disturbing revelation before him. The war between humans and Sci-Fians was never supposed to happen. It was a distraction, a carefully engineered deception. And the real enemy, the machines, were still out there, watching, waiting. Prince Calthar stood beside him, arms crossed, his golden eyes dark with unspoken fury. He had suspected the truth for years, but seeing the evidence laid bare still sent a cold wave of anger through him. Carter finally broke the silence. So, what now? Calthar turned his gaze toward the human soldier. Now, we do what no one else has dared to do. Carter smirked. Let me guess. Suicidal heroics. Calthar's lips curled slightly. Something like that. The plan. Infiltrating the abandoned Sci-Fian outpost. Calthar tapped a series of rooms on the console, shifting the holographic map to a new location. A massive Sci-Fian outpost, hidden deep in the northern wastelands. This facility, Calthar said, was abandoned decades ago after the machine war, but it still holds the last remaining records of our battle against them. Coordinates, weaknesses, everything we need to fight back. Carter folded his arms. Let me guess, it's not going to be a simple walk-in and grab the files situation, is it? Calthar let out a breath. No. The screen flickered, showing heat signatures moving within the base. Not human, not Sci-Fian. The machines had already found it. Carter cursed. Of course they did. Calthar clenched his fists. If they erase those records, we will never stand a chance. Carter sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. All right. So we break in, steal the data, and get out before they turn us into scrap metal. Calthar nodded. And we do it together. Carter gave him a sidelong glance. Never thought I'd hear an alien say that. Calthar smirked. I never thought I'd say it. A dangerous journey. The journey to the outpost was long and treacherous. The landscape of Sci-Fi 9 was as unforgiving as its history. The sky had turned a sickly orange, choked with dust storms that made visibility nearly impossible. Cracked mountains loomed in the distance, and the air held a metallic taste, a lingering trace of old battles. As they navigated the ruined terrain, Carter couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. Calthar walked beside him, his hand resting near his sword. "Good. It means you are paying attention." They moved carefully, sticking to the shadows, avoiding the open wastelands where enemy patrols could spot them. But no matter how silent they tried to be, something felt off. Carter glanced at Calthar. "Tell me something. If your leaders knew about the machines, why cover it up?" Calthar's expression darkened. Fear, cowardice, greed. He paused, looking toward the distant outpost, barely visible through the dust haze. Peace does not profit warlords. As long as humans and Cyphorians fought, our leaders remained powerful. Carter exhaled sharply. "That's sick." Calthar's gaze hardened. "It is the way of war." They walked in silence after that, both soldiers, former enemies, now bound by a truth neither of them wanted to accept. Then, suddenly, Calthar stopped. Carter frowned. "What is it?" Calthar's eyes scanned the horizon. His fingers tightened around his sword hilt. "We are not alone." A low, mechanical hum vibrated through the air. Carter's blood turned cold. He turned just in time to see a figure emerging from the dust storm. Not a machine, not Cyphorian, a human. The betrayal. Carter's grip on his rifle tightened. The figure stepped forward, dust swirling around them like a phantom cloak. Then, as the wind cleared, Carter's stomach twisted into a knot. Commander Elias Rourke. His former superior, a man he had fought beside, a man he had trusted. Carter took a slow step forward. "What the hell are you doing here?" Rourke's expression was unreadable. He looked at Carter, then at Calthar. His eyes lingered on the Typhorian prince for a moment before he spoke. "You should have stayed dead, Carter." Carter's breath hitched. Then, a movement. Before he could react, Rourke raised his weapon. A signal. From behind the ruins, armed soldiers appeared, rifles raised, their armor bearing the insignia of the same human military that had sent Carter on this mission. His own people. Carter cursed under his breath. "Tell me you're not working for them, Rourke." Rourke's expression remained calm. Cold. "You don't understand, Carter." Carter barked out a humorless laugh. "Oh, I understand just fine. The war was never about humans versus Cyphorians, was it?" Rourke didn't answer. Calthar stepped forward, his voice controlled but sharp. "You knew." Rourke's jaw tightened. "I know a lot of things, alien." Carter felt anger rising in his chest. "So what? You're just letting this war go on? Letting people die?" Rourke sighed, as if he pitied him. "It's bigger than you, Carter. Bigger than all of us." Then he nodded to his men. "Kill them. The last stand." Time slowed. Carter dove behind cover as bullets ripped through the air, kicking up dust and debris. His instincts took over, his hands moving on their own as he fired back, taking down two of the soldiers before they could react. Calthar moved like a shadow, fast, precise, deadly. His sword cut through armor, dodging bullets with the grace of a seasoned warrior. But they were outnumbered, and Carter knew it. He reloaded, gritting his teeth. "Any ideas, Your Highness?" Calthar's golden eyes flicked toward him. "Yes, try not to die." Carter let out a breathless laugh. "No promises." A sudden explosion rocked the battlefield, sending a shockwave through the ruins. Carter looked up, his eyes widening. Through the smoke and fire, the machines were coming. The betrayal. The world burns. The ruins of Typhos 9 were no longer silent. Gunfire echoed through the shattered remains of a forgotten world, the sharp crack of rifles blending with the furious clash of steel. The air smelled of scorched metal and blood, thick with smoke from the recent explosion. Carter dove behind a crumbling wall, bullets whizzing past his head. His heart pounded like war drums in his chest. His own people, humans he once trusted, were now trying to kill him. And then there was Calthar. The Typhorian prince moved like a storm, his sword flashing in the dim light as he cut through the enemy with fluid precision. His golden armor was smeared with dust and blood, but his expression was unreadable, cold, efficient, merciless. Yet despite their efforts, they were losing. Too many enemies, too many bullets. And then, through the haze of battle, Carter saw him, Commander Elias Rourke, standing tall among the chaos, untouched, watching everything unfold with calm detachment. Carter clenched his teeth. "I swear to God, Rourke, I'm gonna." But before he could finish his threat, something changed. A new sound ripped through the battlefield. A deep mechanical growl. Not human, not Cyphorian. The air vibrated, thick with unseen energy. Then, the machines arrived. The arrival of the machines. From the shadows of the ruins, they emerged. Sleek, black, shifting forms. Half liquid, half metal. Their red, soulless eyes scanned the battlefield, analyzing, calculating. They did not speak. They did not hesitate. They attacked. The first wave descended like ghosts, moving faster than any human soldier could react. One of Rourke's men barely had time to scream before a blade-like limb pierced through his chest. Another was ripped apart in seconds, his body vanishing into the creature's metallic grip. Even Calthar hesitated for a fraction of a second. The machines were stronger than before. Carter's breath came in ragged gasps. This wasn't a war anymore. This was a massacre. Rourke turned, eyes widening as he saw his soldiers falling one by one. He hadn't expected this. He thought he was in control. He was wrong. A temporary truce. Carter didn't waste time. He pivoted, grabbed Calthar by the arm, and pulled him behind cover. The prince barely resisted, his sharp eyes flicking toward Carter in silent understanding. Carter exhaled. "We don't have time for this. If we don't work together, we're both dead." Calthar nodded once. Agreed. Carter peeked over the rubble, scanning the battlefield. The machines were tearing through everything, moving like liquid shadows, shifting their forms to counter every attack. Bullets did nothing. Blades barely slowed them down. And Rourke. The bastard was retreating. Carter clenched his fists. Coward. Calthar followed his gaze. "Let him run." Carter frowned. "You're just gonna let him get away?" Calthar's golden eyes narrowed. "We have a more immediate concern." Carter turned back toward the battle. The machines had nearly wiped out the remaining human soldiers. Only a handful remained, trying to fall back, but there was nowhere to go. Carter cursed under his breath. He never thought he'd be in this position, fighting alongside a Cyphorian prince, trying to save the same humans who just tried to kill him. Damn, the universe had a messed-up sense of humor. The impossible fight. "All right," Carter muttered, gripping his rifle. "Let's see if these bastards can bleed." Calthar smirked. "They don't." "Yeah, well, we'll see about that." Then they charge. Calthar moved like lightning, his sword glowing with ancient energy as he sliced through one of the creature's limbs. Sparks flew, but the machine reformed instantly, shifting its metallic body like liquid. Carter fired into its head, the impact forcing it backward but not killing it. Dan. They were too strong. Calthar barely avoided a clawed arm swinging toward him, twisting in midair and driving his sword straight through the machine's core. The alien blade burned white-hot, sending a shockwave through the creature's body. This time, it staggered. Carter's eyes widened. Wait, that actually hurt it. Calthar withdrew his blade, his expression unreadable. Cyphorian steel. They fear it. Carter grinned. Then let's give them something to fear. The last survivors. For the next few minutes, Carter and Calthar fought like a single, unstoppable force. Carter provided cover fire, drawing the machines away while Calthar struck them with precision attacks. Every time his blade connected, the machines hesitated. They felt pain. They weren't invincible, but they were still winning. One by one, the remaining human soldiers fell. The machines adapted, moving faster, smarter, deadlier. Calthar's breath was heavy, sweat dripping from his brow. Even he couldn't keep this up. Carter's rifle clicked empty. No more bullets. He swung it like a club, smashing the nearest machine across the head. It staggered, just enough for Calthar to finish it off. But it wasn't enough. There were still too many. And then, a new sound cut through the battlefield. A deep, low hum, energy pulsing through the air. Carter turned, his heart stopping. At the edge of the battlefield, rising from the ruins like a forgotten god, was something bigger. Something worse, a machine unlike the others. Towering, pulsing with red veins of raw power. Its eyes locked onto them. And then, for the first time, it spoke. Target identified. Human and Sci-Fi. Adaptive threat level. High. Carter exhaled. Oh, that's not good. The last stand. The giant awakens. The battlefield fell into an unnatural silence. The towering machine, a war construct unlike anything Carter had ever seen, stood motionless for a moment, its red eyes scanning the ruins, analyzing everything before it. Its sleek, liquid metal body pulsed with strange, glowing veins of raw energy, shifting its form as if it were alive. Carter could feel it. This was different. The smaller machines had been deadly, but this was something else. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a commander. Then the silence broke. Human. Sci-Fi. Adaptive threat detected. The machine's voice was deep, emotionless, layered with metallic echoes. It was studying them, learning. Calthar's grip tightened around his sword. His golden eyes flickered with something Carter had never seen before. Not anger, not defiance, but something close to recognition. Carter exhaled sharply. You've seen one of these before, haven't you? Calthar nodded slowly. Once, and it cost us a world. Carter's gut twisted. Well, that's just great. The giant machine shifted. Its arms morphed into massive plasma cannons, glowing with crackling blue energy. Then it fired. A shockwave of pure destruction tore through the ruins. Carter barely had time to throw himself behind a fallen structure before the blast obliterated everything in its path. Stone and metal melted on impact, turning to liquid slag. The air itself seemed to tremble from the sheer power unleashed. Calthar dodged with inhuman speed, flipping behind cover just as the heat singed the edge of his cloak. Carter's ears rang violently from the explosion. He gritted his teeth, heart pounding. This thing wasn't playing around. A desperate plan. Carter peeked over the rubble, watching as the machine recalibrated its weapons, adjusting its aim. It was learning. "We need a plan," he shouted. Calthar crouched beside him, his expression grim. "We can't fight it directly. Not like this." Carter wiped sweat from his forehead. "Fantastic. So we run." Calthar shook his head. "We don't have to defeat it. We just need to disable it long enough to escape." Carter narrowed his eyes. "And how do we do that?" The prince pointed to the machine's glowing red veins, pulsing like circuits across its body. "That energy core, it is not just its power source, it is its mind." Carter frowned. "So, we take out its brain." Calthar nodded. "Exactly." Carter exhaled. "Great. And I suppose you've got a magical Sci-Fi sword trick that can do that." Calthar smirked. "If you give me an opening, I will find out." Carter muttered under his breath. "I hate this plan." Then, before he could talk himself out of it, he ran. The suicide charge. Carter sprinted across the battlefield, weaving through the debris as bullets and plasma beams tore through the ground around him. The giant machine reacted instantly. It turned its full attention toward him. Carter felt the heat of a plasma blast explode behind him, barely missing him by inches. The force sent him flying forward, rolling hard across the dirt. "Keep going, human." Calthar's voice cut through the chaos. Carter forced himself up, pushing through the pain. One more step, just a little closer. The machine raised its massive cannon, locking onto him. Carter knew he wouldn't make it. And then, a blur of golden light. Calthar leaped through the air like a phantom, his sword igniting with ancient Sci-Fi runes. One strike. A single, perfect slash. The blade sliced through the machine's pulsing core. A moment of pure silence. Then, the world exploded in red light. The fall of the machine. The machine convulsed violently, its body shifting erratically, liquid metal melting and reforming as if trying to hold itself together. It failed. With a final, ear-shattering shriek, the machine collapsed. Its body imploded inward, folding in on itself as its energy core overloaded. And just like that, it was over. Calthar landed beside Carter, breathing heavily. His sword flickered, the runes dimming. Carter groaned, pushing himself up. "You? Okay." Calthar smirked, still standing. Carter shook his head. "Remind me to never doubt you again." Calthar chuckled. "I will." But there was no time to celebrate, because in the distance, more machines were coming. And they were angry. The escape. Carter and Calthar ran. They moved through the ruins, dodging the pursuing machines, using the destruction around them as cover. Carter's lungs burned, every muscle in his body screaming for rest. But he didn't stop. They had won this fight. But the war had only just begun. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the outskirts of the ruins. The sky above them had turned a deep, unnatural red, a sign that more machines were inbound. Calthar stopped, looking back. Carter followed his gaze. The battlefield was a graveyard. Human soldiers, Sci-Fi warriors, and the twisted, broken husks of the machines. They had fought against each other for so long, and for what? Carter clenched his jaw. "This has to stop." Calthar nodded. Agreed. They turned back toward the dark horizon, toward their next battle, toward the final fight. Because now, for the first time, human and Sci-Fi stood together. And the machines would know fear. The beginning of peace. A sky of fire. The sky was burning. Thick clouds of smoke and ash stretched across the horizon, turning the air into a suffocating haze. The ground trembled beneath Carter's feet, the distant echoes of explosions and dying war machines rumbling like a storm on the edge of oblivion. He and Calthar ran through the ruined wasteland, pushing their bodies beyond their limits. Behind them, the machines were regrouping. The battle they had just escaped had only been a fraction of the storm to come. Calthar's breathing was sharp, his golden armor stained with dirt and blood. But despite his exhaustion, his eyes still burned with defiance. "We can't outrun them forever," Carter muttered between breaths. Calthar nodded. "Then we don't." Carter frowned. "What? We just stop and let them kill us?" The Kyphorian prince gave him a sharp look. "No, we stop running and end this war." Carter exhaled, shaking his head. "And how the hell do you expect to do that?" Calthar didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pointed toward the mountains ahead, the last remnants of a once mighty fortress, now half buried under the ruins of an ancient battle. "This place," Calthar said, "it is more than rubble. It is a weapon." Carter narrowed his eyes. "What kind of weapon?" Calthar turned toward him, his expression unreadable. "One built to erase the machines forever. The hidden superweapon." The two warriors climbed through the wreckage of the old fortress, moving with urgency. Carter ran a hand along the old metallic walls. Unlike the rest of the ruins, which had been reduced to dust, this place still felt alive. Ancient. Waiting. Calthar moved toward an old control panel, pressing his palm against the surface. The room vibrated. And then, the fortress awoke. Massive screens flickered on, lighting up with holograms of old war plans, battle strategies, and schematics of the machines. But Carter's eyes locked onto one image in particular, a planet-sized device buried deep under Sci-Fi 9. "What the hell is that?" he asked. Calthar's voice was steady. "The core cannon." Carter's stomach twisted. "That sounds dramatic." Calthar didn't flinch. "Because it is." The screen shifted, showing a countdown timer, inactive for centuries. "This was the last contingency," Calthar explained. "The final weapon designed by my ancestors. A failsafe in case the machines could never be stopped." Carter folded his arms. "And what does it do?" Calthar looked at him. "It sends an energy pulse across the entire galaxy, one powerful enough to disable every machine permanently." Carter's breath caught. "Wait, every machine? As in, all of them? Everywhere?" Calthar nodded. "Yes." Carter ran a hand through his hair. "That's actually insane." Calthar's gaze darkened. "And it is our only chance." Carter took a deep breath. "All right. So what's the catch?" Calthar hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "The activation process is irreversible." Carter's stomach dropped. Calthar continued, his voice heavy with something Carter hadn't heard before. "Regret. If we activate it, it will not just destroy the machines, it will destroy this planet." Carter felt his blood turn to ice. Sci-Fi 9 would die. And so would anyone left on it. The decision. Carter turned away, running a hand down his face. "Damn it, Calthar." The prince looked at him, silent, waiting. Carter's mind raced. If they used the core cannon, it would end the war forever. No more machines, no more battles, no more innocent lives lost. But it would also mean the destruction of Typhos 9, and Calthar knew it. Carter swallowed hard. "If we do this, there's no turning back." Calthar nodded. "I know." Carter exhaled. "And what about your people?" Calthar's golden eyes darkened. "My people are already dead." Carter hesitated. He had seen glimpses of Calthar's pain, but now, for the first time, he truly understood it. The Typhorians were already a dying race. Their leaders had abandoned them. Their home was a graveyard. And Calthar was the last of their warriors. Carter clenched his jaw. There was only one choice. He turned back to the control panel. "Let's do it." Calthar's expression remained neutral, but his eyes softened, just for a moment. Then they activated the core cannon, the end of the machine war. The fortress shook violently as the countdown began. A deep, echoing hum filled the air. Energy pulsed beneath their feet, rising from the depths of the planet itself. The walls began to glow, ancient power surging through them. The core cannon was waking up. But so were the machines. Outside the fortress, the mechanical armies of the enemy began converging, their sensors detecting the energy spike. Red lights flickered in the distance, moving in unison like a swarm of locusts. They knew, and they were coming. Carter loaded his last magazine. Calthar raised his blade, and together, they made their last stand. The battle that followed was chaos. Carter fought like a man with nothing left to lose, his bullets tearing through the enemy ranks even as they closed in. Calthar was a storm of steel, his blade cutting through the machines as they swarmed around him. And all the while, the countdown continued. 5 minutes. 3 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. Carter reloaded, but there were no more bullets. A machine lunged at him. He barely had time to react before Calthar stepped in front of him, his sword cutting the enemy down. Carter let out a breathless laugh. "Not bad, Your Highness." Calthar smirked. "Not bad yourself, human." Then, the world turned white. The aftermath. The energy pulse ripped through the planet, surging across the battlefield like a tidal wave. The machines froze in place, their red eyes flickering. And then they fell. One by one, the war machines collapsed. Everywhere. Across Sci-Fi 9. Across the galaxy. The machine war was over. Carter lay on the ground, staring at the sky as flames rained down from the crumbling remains of the fortress. His body ached. His vision blurred. And beside him, Kelthar stood, watching the horizon. They had won. But Sci-Fi 9 was dying. Carter exhaled. Now what? Kelthar looked at him. And for the first time, Carter saw something other than war in his eyes. Hope. We find a new home. Carter chuckled, closing his eyes as the last remnants of war faded into silence. The war was over, but their journey had just begun.